So section 4 in chapter 4 is graphing a function rule. You'll be happy to know that there is a little bit of new stuff in this section, but it's not anything very drastic. Our main goal is just to make sure that you can graph equations that represent functions. When you do that, the thing you have to go back to, sometimes we overcomplicate things. Just make sure that you understand when you're graphing, all you're doing is you're plotting a bunch of ordered pairs. And an ordered pair is just two numbers, one for the x and one for the y. That's what an ordered pair is. Now, your ordered pairs are made up of inputs and outputs. And depending on the equation, like if we use different variables other than x and y, that can change. But in this situation, x is the input and y is the output. It's like putting something into a machine, a dollar bill into a machine, and it's spitting out a candy bar or a bottle of pop. That's what our input and output is like. So we need a set of inputs for x. For this case, I'm going to use -2, -1, 0, 2, and 1. So when I do this, I take -2 times -2, which is 4, plus 1 is 5. -2 times -1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 0 times -2 is 0, plus 1 is 1. -2 times 2, -4, plus 1, -3. Oh, I did these out of order, but that's all right. -2 times 1, -2, plus 1, -3. So it doesn't matter that I did these out of order. I really did screw that up on accident. I'm sorry about that. But it doesn't matter. -2, 5. So I go over to -2, up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I put a point. -1, 3. 0, 1. 2, -3. And 1, -1. And there is our line. Okay? We're going to hop over this one because if you need another example, go ahead and take a look at this one on page 254. But what the difference in this chapter is a continuous graph versus a discrete graph. Okay? Continuous graphs are lines. They are unbroken and unbroken lines. Where a discrete graph is isolated points. It's sometimes still in the shape of a line, but we don't actually draw the line. And the whole reason for the difference is depending on what you're dealing with. Okay? If we were talking about the weight of a student at school, that student could weigh 60 pounds, they could weigh 100 pounds, they could weigh 140 pounds, they could weigh 180 pounds, or they could weigh anything in between. It could be 140.4, 140.7, 141.2. It could be any number in between. That's continuous. Discrete would be like, what size shoes does the student wear? The student could wear size 4, size 6, let me undo that. Size 4, size 4.5, size 5, size 5.5, and so on. The student cannot wear a shoe size in between 4 and 4.5. They don't sell them. They don't sell a 4.2 shoe size. They don't sell a 5.7 shoe size. So these are the only options. And when that's true, that's what makes it discrete compared to continuous. Okay? And so that's the main difference in this chapter, is you need to decide whether or not things are continuous or things are discrete. So to keep this video short, I'm going to ask that you kind of take a look at page 255. But I want to talk about this. If you want to actually see the graph, you can go to page 255 for the graph. But the thing I want you to keep in mind more than anything is continuous or discrete. So let's look at that. This one is dealing with the weight of cheese in ounces, and that all depends on the number of gallons of milk used. So if we use 1 gallon of milk, the cheese weighs 16 ounces. If we use 2 gallons, it weighs 32 ounces. Can you have numbers in between 1 and 2 and 16 and 32? Is it possible to add 1.1 gallons of milk? Is it possible to add 1.5 gallons of milk? Can you have half gallons? And the answer to that is yes. You could add any amount of milk you wanted. So therefore, this will be continuous, and your graph will look something like this with a solid line to it. And again, this is all on page 255. On this one, this is the amount of money made from selling a cheese wheel. Okay, so each wheel of cheese costs $9. If you sell one, you make $9. If you sell two, you make 18. Is it possible for this person to sell or you to buy 1.4 wheels of cheese? You may say yes, except you have to keep in mind is that cheesemakers don't let you just usually come in and say, yeah, I would like a 0.68 of that cheese wheel. Supermarkets will, but not the cheesemakers themselves. The cheesemakers themselves make the whole wheel of cheese, and the grocery stores have to buy the whole wheel of cheese. Okay, so this one is discrete because you cannot have every value between. So this graph is going to look something like this, just dots. Okay, so that's the main difference with this chapter. Again, I urge you to go take a look at page 255, and if you have any questions, please ask those in class tomorrow.